Welcome to Echo Case File, the channel where we uncover the real stories behind the headlines with nothing but the verified facts. Whether it's a single chilling case or a full series like our Texas Fathers collection, we bring you the details straight from the records. If you're new here or returning, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload, and give this video a like if you're ready for the story. Let's dive in. Case 1. Yaser Abdel Said. Born on January 27, 1957, in El Arish on the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, Yaser Abdel Said arrived in the United States on a student visa in 1983. He eventually became a permanent resident and gained American citizenship in 1997. He worked as a taxi driver in the Dallas area and married Patricia Owens in February of 1987 when he was 30 years old and she was 15. The couple had 3 children together: a son named Islam born in 1988, a daughter named Amina born in 1989, and another daughter named Sarah born in 1990. Said also had a daughter from a previous relationship born in 1987. From the start, Said exerted tight control over his family. He believed strongly in traditional values and became increasingly upset as his daughters embraced American life. Amina and Sarah attended school, made friends, and eventually began dating, choices that Said saw as dishonoring the family. Court records and family statements later revealed a pattern of monitoring and punishment. Said would secretly record his daughters with video or audio devices, watching their every move. Amina once told friends she feared using public telephones because she believed her father could reach her anywhere. She wrote emails expressing that her father intended to harm her if she continued certain friendships. At 16, Said took Amina to Egypt in an attempt to arrange a marriage to an older acquaintance, but she refused. Sarah took a part-time job at a convenience store after school and Said would videotape her there, later punishing her for simply smiling at customers. The tension built over years. Amina met Joseph Moreno through Taekwondo classes and began a relationship with him. She lived in constant anxiety, instructing Moreno never to contact her if she sent a secret code word, fearing her father would check her phone. When Said discovered a note from Amina to Moreno, she claimed it was imaginary to avoid conflict. Despite the move to a new house in Louisville, about 20 miles from their previous home, the pressure only increased. Amina confided in Moreno that Said regularly threatened to kill her and that she believed he was serious. She worried that Moreno himself could be in danger. By late 2007, the situation reached a breaking point. After Christmas that year, Amina and Sarah left home with their mother Patricia and went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, staying with relatives of Amina's boyfriend. Patricia later said she wanted to visit her mother's grave in East Texas on December 31st, the anniversary of her passing. Said flooded Patricia with phone calls, involving other relatives to persuade her to bring the girls home. Patricia eventually agreed, telling the daughters their father had forgiven them. Sarah reluctantly went along, but Amina refused and stayed at a friend's house. Patricia drove there, argued with Amina, and insisted they return. On January 1st, 2008, Said picked up Amina and Sarah, telling them he wanted to take them out to eat and talk. Patricia offered to join, but said he preferred time alone with the girls. He drove them in his taxi to Irving, Texas. What happened next inside that taxi became the center of one of Texas's most haunting cases. Amina was shot twice and died at the scene. Sarah was shot 9 times, but survived long enough to dial 911. In a desperate call that would later play in court, Sarah cried out, "Help, my dad shot me. I am dying, I am dying." The taxi was found abandoned outside the service entrance of the Omni Mandalay Hotel in Las Colinas by another cab driver. The girls' bodies were discovered inside, and the investigation immediately focused on their father. Said vanished that same day. Authorities initially believed he might have fled to Egypt, but no travel records confirmed it. Patricia filed for divorce in 2009. Over the years, tips came in about possible sightings of Said driving a taxi in New York City and Newark, New Jersey. The case stayed active, and on December 4, 2014, the Federal Bureau of Investigation placed Said on its 10 most wanted fugitives list with a $100,000 reward. He remained at large for 12 years total, 6 of those on the most wanted list. The breakthrough came in 2017. A maintenance worker at an apartment complex in Bedford, Texas, rented by Said's son Islam, reported seeing a man who matched Said's description. The worker identified Said from a photograph. Detectives questioned Islam, who became upset and made a phone call saying they had a problem. A search warrant was executed at 1 in the morning, but the apartment was empty. A sliding glass patio door stood open, and broken branches on a shrub below suggested someone had jumped from the balcony. Eyeglasses lay near the shrub. Inside, investigators collected cigarette butts and a toothbrush. DNA testing at the Federal Bureau of Investigation Laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, matched the samples to the biological father of Amina and Sarah. Surveillance intensified. By August of 2020, agents watched a home in Justin, Texas, around the clock. They observed Islam and Said's brother Yasin entering and exiting, noticing the shadow of another man inside after they left. After a week of monitoring, the Federal Bureau of Investigation obtained a search warrant and arrested Yaser Abdel Said on August 26, 2020. That same day in Euless, Texas, Islam, then 32, and Yasin Abdel Said, then 59, were arrested for helping to conceal a fugitive. Said was indicted on capital murder charges, though prosecutors did not seek the death penalty. He was held at the Dallas County Jail North Tower. His trial began on August 2, 2022, in Dallas County. Through a translator, Said claimed he was not present when the shootings occurred. He said he took the girls for a ride, sensed a threat aimed at him, and left them alone in the taxi. The jury deliberated for 3 hours after closing arguments, and on August 9, 2022, found him guilty of capital murder. Dallas County District Court Judge Chica Neim sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of the latest records, Said remains at the McConnell unit near Beeville, Texas. Islam Said later pleaded guilty to harboring a fugitive, conspiring to harbor a fugitive, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. He received a 10-year federal sentence in April of 2021 and is serving it at the Federal Correctional Institution in Big Spring. Yasin Abdel Said was convicted of conspiracy and harboring a fugitive in February of 2021 and sentenced to 12 years in June of that year, serving at the Federal Correctional Institution in Bastrop. The case drew national attention, inspiring the 2014 documentary The Price of Honor and an episode of The Hunt with John Walsh. Family members and investigators described the motive as rooted in Said's belief that his daughters had dishonored the family by dating outside cultural expectations and refusing arranged marriages. The story of Amina and Sarah Said remains one of Texas's most discussed cases of familial control turning fatal, with the 911 call and the long fugitive hunt keeping it alive in true crime conversations for years. That concludes Case 1. Now we move directly into the next. Case 2. John David Battaglia, Jr. Born on August 2, 1955, at a military base in Enterprise, Alabama, John David Battaglia, Jr. grew up moving frequently because of his father's military career. The family lived across the United States and even in Germany before his father left the service in 1970. Battaglia attended high school in Oregon, then moved to Dumont, New Jersey, graduating from Dumont High School. He enrolled at Fairleigh Dickinson University, first as a pre-med student before switching to accounting, but dropped out in 1976. After legal issues related to illegal drug use, he joined the United States Marines, rising to the rank of sergeant before leaving to pursue accounting. He moved to Dallas because his father lived there, took night classes to become a certified public accountant, and even did some modeling work. Eventually, he established himself as an accountant in the Dallas area. Battaglia had 3 children. From his first marriage to Michelle Getty, an attorney, came a daughter named Christy. That marriage ended with reports of harassment and domestic violence. Battaglia faced a misdemeanor assault charge in 1987 after an incident outside Christy's school that resulted in a broken nose for Getty and another altercation at a bus stop. He received 2 years of probation. His second marriage was to Mary Jean Pearl on April 6, 1991, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They lived in Highland Park, Texas, and had 2 daughters, Mary Faith, born January 9, 1992, and Liberty May, born January 17, 1995. The girls attended John S. Bradfield Elementary School in Highland Park. Pearl separated from Battaglia in January of 1999 after incidents of verbal abuse. He was not allowed to live with the family anymore. On Christmas of 1999, during a visit, Battaglia assaulted Pearl, leading to another guilty plea for misdemeanor assault and 2 more years of probation. Pearl filed for divorce immediately afterward, and it was finalized in August of 2000. She worked to have his probation revoked because of continued telephone harassment and marijuana use that violated the terms. Despite the marital problems, Battaglia doted on his daughters and was allowed periodic visits. To people outside the family, he spoke warmly about faith and liberty while criticizing his ex-wives. Columnists later noted that he managed to convince many that he was a devoted father. The situation escalated when Pearl continued pushing to revoke his probation. On May 2, 2001, Pearl dropped the girls off with Battaglia for what was supposed to be a dinner at the mall. Instead, he took them to his apartment in the Adam Hatz Lofts in Deep Ellum, Dallas. From that apartment, Battaglia called Pearl and kept her on the phone. He had Faith ask her mother, "Why do you want Daddy to go to jail?" Faith cried out, "No, Daddy. Please do not. Do not do it." Pearl urged the girls to run, but Battaglia fatally shot Faith 3 times and Liberty 5 times. He then told Pearl, "Merry fucking Christmas," a direct reference to the Christmas 1999 assault. Pearl hung up and immediately called 911. After the shootings, Battaglia left a message on the girls' bedroom answering machine. He said, "Good night, my little babies. I hope you are resting in a different place. I love you. I wish that you had nothing to do with your mother. She was evil, vicious, stupid. You will be free of her. I love you very dearly. You were very brave girls. Very brave. Liberty, you were oh so brave. I love you so much. Bye." He then went to a tattoo parlor and had 2 roses inked on his left biceps, 1 for each daughter. Police arrested him shortly afterward after he engaged in a physical struggle with officers, leaving him with a black eye. They recovered 16 firearms from the apartment. Investigators determined the motive was revenge against Pearl for her efforts to revoke his probation and for leaving the marriage. Authorities described it as the ultimate act of retaliation. The funeral for Mary, Faith, and Liberty May took place at our Redeemer Lutheran Church in North Dallas, with burial at Hillcrest Cemetery next to Pearl's father. Battaglia's capital murder trial opened on April 22, 2002, at the Frank Crowley Courts building in Dallas. Prosecutor Howard Blackman represented the state, while Battaglia was defended by Paul Johnson and Paul Brauchler. The jury deliberated only 19 minutes before convicting him of capital murder on April 30, 2002. In the penalty phase, the defense raised bipolar disorder as a mitigating factor, but the same jury sentenced him to death the same day. He was sent to the Polunsky unit near Livingston, Texas. Automatic appeals followed. A scheduled execution date of March 30, 2016, was stayed by the Fifth United States Circuit Court of Appeals to examine mental competency claims. Texas did not challenge that stay. A new date of December 7, 2016, was also stayed on December 2 by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals for further competency review, allowing 60 days for arguments. On September 20, 2017, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals dismissed the incompetence claims, concluding that Battaglia had likely been malingering. Experts noted he had researched legal cases in the prison law library. A new death warrant set the execution for February 1, 2018. All remaining appeals failed. On the evening of February 1, 2018, at the Huntsville unit, Battaglia was executed by lethal injection at 9:40 in the evening Central Standard Time at the age of 62. When he saw Pearl in the witness area, he said, "Well, hi Mary Jean." He then told the warden, "I will see y'all later. Bye. Go ahead, please." Pearl later said she had seen enough and left. In a statement before the execution, Pearl had told Battaglia he was one of the most heinous murderers of modern times, and that she would not waste time being present, though she ultimately witnessed it. Battaglia's daughter from his first marriage, Christy, supported the execution, saying that without the death penalty the family would live in fear. His first wife, Michelle Getty, also supported it. No one sat on Battaglia's side of the witness room. The case prompted legislative changes. Texas State Representative Toby Goodman sponsored House Bill 140, requiring judges to consider histories of domestic violence when deciding parental visitation. The Texas Senate passed it unanimously, and Governor Rick Perry signed it into law, effective September 1, 2001. In memory of the girls, facilities for supervised visitation were created, including Hannah's House and Faith and Liberty's Place operated by the Family Place in Dallas. Author Irene Pence wrote the book No, Daddy, Do Not in 2003, detailing the events. The murders became part of broader discussions about domestic violence in the Park Cities area, where 3 similar incidents occurred within 25 months in the early 2000s. The story of John David Battaglia Jr. stands as one of Texas's most chilling examples of a father using his own children to inflict pain on their mother. The phone call, the answering machine message, and the calculated timing after probation disputes left an indelible mark on the Dallas community and the legal system. Case 3. Cameron Todd Willingham. Born on January 9, 1968, in Ardmore, Oklahoma, Cameron Todd Willingham grew up primarily under the care of his father Gene, who ran an auto salvage yard, and his stepmother Eugenia, after his biological mother left the family when he was only 13 months old. As a teenager, Willingham attended Ardmore High School but dropped out during 10th grade. He had early encounters with the law, including probation for burglary, theft, and driving under the influence, plus a short stint in county jail for carrying a concealed weapon. In October of 1991, he married Stacy Kuykendall after they had lived together for several years. The couple had 3 daughters, Amber Louise, who was 2 years old at the time of the events that followed, and 1-year-old twins Carmen Diane and Cameron Marie. The family settled in Corsicana, Texas, where Willingham worked as a mechanic until losing his job in November of 1991. Stacy worked at her brother's bar in nearby Angus, Texas. Neighbors and family later described the girls as spoiled and well cared for, with no documented evidence of physical abuse toward the children. On December 23, 1991, a fire broke out at the family home on West 11th Street in Corsicana. Willingham was inside with the 3 girls while Stacy was out shopping for Christmas presents at a thrift store. He escaped the burning house with minor burns, including singed hair on his chest, eyelids, and head, plus a 2-inch burn on his right shoulder. His wrists and hands showed smoke residue, but medical checks found no signs of smoke inhalation in his lungs. Willingham was taken to the hospital and placed in handcuffs shortly after. The 3 daughters did not survive the fire. Fire investigators arrived and began examining the scene, noting patterns they interpreted as evidence of intentional use of a liquid accelerant, multiple points of origin, and rapid spread with intense heat. Samples taken near the front doorway tested positive for mineral spirits. Willingham was charged with murder on January 8, 1992. The trial opened in August of 1992 in Navarro County. Prosecutors offered Willingham a life sentence if he would plead guilty, but he refused, maintaining his innocence throughout. The state argued the fire had been deliberately set, pointing to the char patterns described as puddle-like and the positive accelerant test. Lead fire investigator Manuel Vasquez testified that there were 3 separate points of origin, which he said could only result from human action. A jailhouse informant named Johnny Webb told the jury that Willingham had confessed to starting the fire while in custody, claiming it was to cover up an injury or death of one of the girls. Psychologist testimony and a psychiatrist known for his work in capital cases, James Grigson, described Willingham as an extremely severe sociopath who could not be rehabilitated and posed a future danger. Witnesses recounted Willingham's behavior at the scene, including shouting that his babies were inside, moving his car away from the house, and becoming agitated after the fire intensified to the point where neighbors had to restrain him from trying to re-enter. Some noted what they saw as odd calmness or levity in the hours afterward, such as ordering a replacement dart set at a fundraiser. The defense presented limited testimony, including from a babysitter who said she believed Willingham loved his children and could not have harmed them. Willingham himself did not take the stand and declined a polygraph test. After deliberation, the jury convicted him of capital murder. He was sentenced to death and sent first to the Ellis unit, later transferred to the Polunsky unit, with inmate number 999041. Willingham spent more than 12 years on death row, consistently maintaining his innocence. His execution took place on February 17, 2004, at the Huntsville unit. He was 36 years old. In his final statement, directed toward his ex-wife Stacy and others present, the words were reported as vulgar, and he made a gesture with his middle finger before the process began. He was pronounced dead at 6:20 in the evening. His body was cremated, and his parents secretly spread the ashes on the graves of his 3 daughters at Oakwood Cemetery, where a cenotaph gravestone was later placed in Rollins Cemetery. The case might have remained a closed chapter in Texas criminal history if not for advances in fire science that began raising questions years later. In 2009, the Texas Forensic Science Commission hired independent expert Dr. Craig Baylor to review the original investigation. Baylor's report, released on August 17, 2009, concluded that the finding of arson could not be scientifically sustained. He noted that key testimony relied on outdated methods more reminiscent of folklore than modern forensics. 9 leading fire scientists reviewed the evidence and reached similar conclusions, stating that the original investigators had used theories disproven by experiments, such as recreations of similar fires that produced the same char patterns without accelerants. A major article in The New Yorker by David Gran in September of 2009 brought national attention, highlighting how the arson evidence was unconvincing under contemporary standards and that the primary non-scientific evidence against Willingham came from the jailhouse informant, whose testimony had been recanted and then recanted again. Additional documents later surfaced showing that the informant, Johnny Webb, had been offered favorable treatment in exchange for his statements, though this was not disclosed at trial. Stacy Kuykendall's statements over the years added layers of complexity. Initially, she testified at trial that Willingham had never abused the children and that they were spoiled. In 2009, after the execution, she told reporters that during a final prison visit weeks before his death, Willingham had admitted to her that he set the fire in response to her threats of divorce the night before. She stated publicly that he had confessed and that the conviction represented the closest thing to justice for her daughters. Corsicana officials defended the original investigation, releasing affidavits and disputing the Baylor findings as overlooking key records. The Texas Forensic Science Commission ultimately acknowledged in 2010 that the arson determination relied on flawed science, but found insufficient evidence of deliberate negligence by the original investigators. The Innocence Project became heavily involved, filing lawsuits seeking recognition of official misconduct and continuing to advocate that Willingham was wrongly convicted based on junk science. A 2014 discovery of handwritten notes in the informant's files further suggested undisclosed deals. In 2015, the Texas State Bar pursued disciplinary action against the lead prosecutor for failing to disclose favorable evidence to the defense. The case inspired documentaries, including Incendiary: The Willingham Case, which premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival. Renewed interest surged again in 2025 with the Netflix release of Trial by Fire, bringing the story to new audiences and reigniting debates about the reliability of forensic evidence in capital cases. Throughout it all, Willingham's parents and supporters maintained that he died an innocent man, while others pointed to his criminal history and behavior as consistent with guilt. The Corsicana fire and its aftermath remain one of the most analyzed and debated executions in modern Texas history, with the scientific reevaluations continuing to echo in discussions about justice and evidence standards. Case 4. David Conley. Born on December 29, 1966, David Ray Conley III had a long history of legal troubles dating back to 1988, including arrests for domestic violence, driving under the influence, and drug possession. By 2015, he was 48 years old and had faced multiple charges related to violence toward his former girlfriend Valerie Jackson, including incidents in 2000, 2013, and most recently on July 28, 2015, when he allegedly assaulted her by repeatedly striking her head against a refrigerator. That latest charge was still pending when the events of August unfolded. Conley had helped raise several children in the household, but had grown increasingly frustrated, later telling investigators he was fed up with how the children were being raised and felt they showed him disrespect. He suffered from bipolar disorder according to family members, and records noted a pattern of claiming mental health issues in legal contexts. He lived separately from the family at the time, but had maintained contact. On August 8, 2015, in a home on Falling Oaks Road in unincorporated northern Harris County near Houston, Conley carried out a prolonged incident that would become one of the state's most shocking family tragedies. He entered the residence through an unlocked window after Valerie had changed the locks. Inside were Valerie and Jackson, age 40, her husband Dwayne Clifford Jackson Sr., age 50, and 6 children. 13-year-old Nathaniel Nicholas Conley, who was Conley's biological son with Valerie, 11-year-old Honesty Faith Jackson, 10-year-old Dwayne Clifford Jackson Jr., 9-year-old Caleb Curtis Jackson, 7-year-old Trinity Hope Jackson, and 6-year-old Jonah Curtis Jackson. Conley confronted the family and forced them into the master bedroom, using handcuffs and restraints he had purchased in advance along with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol and extra ammunition. Valerie managed to send a text message to her mother indicating she was being held at gunpoint. Over the course of approximately 9 hours, from around 10:30 in the morning until about 9 in the evening, Conley shot each victim in the back of the head. Valerie was forced to witness the others before she herself was killed last. In total, Conley discharged the pistol at least 34 times. All 8 victims died at the scene from gunshot wounds. The broader community learned of the horror through a series of welfare checks. Valerie's mother contacted authorities at 10:42 in the morning after receiving the alarming text. Officers knocked on the door and received no response after waiting nearly an hour. Additional checks occurred in the afternoon prompted by concerned siblings, again with no answer. During a 4th check around 6 in the evening, officers spotted a body through a window and learned of an outstanding warrant connected to someone inside. At 8 in the evening, for officers forced entry, at which point Conley opened fire on them. They retreated and called for backup. Conley surrendered around 9 in the evening after a brief exchange of gunfire. He was taken into custody without further injury to law enforcement. Hours later, when contacted by Valerie's brother, Conley admitted what he had done when directly asked if he had killed her. In subsequent jailhouse interviews, he elaborated on his grievances, stating he loved his son but felt the children were being raised in a way that troubled him deeply. On September 28, 2015, he met with new Black Panther Party leader Quan LX at his own request and provided further details of the events before the meeting ended abruptly. Conley was charged the next day, August 9, 2015, with capital murder. Prosecutors initially planned to seek the death penalty, describing the case as a no-brainer for that outcome given the number of victims. Bond was denied, and he remained in Harris County Jail. His defense team announced in February of 2016 that they would pursue a mental disability argument. The trial for the murders of Valerie and Dwayne Jackson Sr. began in downtown Houston in early October of 2021. By that point, the death penalty was off the table after Conley was determined to be intellectually disabled. On October 7, 2021, the jury convicted him of capital murder. He received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of the most recent records, Conley is incarcerated at the W.J. Estelle Unit in Huntsville, Texas. The victim's memorial service took place on August 17, 2015, at Fallbrook Church in Northwest Houston, drawing around 200 mourners. Family members spoke of the pain of losing so many loved ones in one day, with Valerie's mother having made repeated attempts to check on the household that tragic Saturday. The case highlighted Conley's prior domestic issues and the dangers that can arise from escalating family disputes. Investigators recovered the pistol, ammunition, and handcuffs, confirming premeditation through purchases made after he noted behavioral issues with the children. Conley had claimed in statements that he felt disrespected and that the household environment had become untenable for him. The Harris County District Attorney's Office presented evidence of the prolonged nature of the incident, the text message from Valerie, and the multiple failed welfare checks that preceded the discovery. While the full scope involved 8 deaths, the capital murder conviction focused on the 2 adult victims, with the children's deaths incorporated into the overall case narrative. The story received extensive local coverage in Houston media, with trial updates detailing the welfare check timeline and Conley's surrender after the standoff. It stands as one of the largest single-family incidents in recent Harris County history, remembered for the scale of loss and the hours-long ordeal that preceded the final outcome. Case 5. Luis Luna. In the summer of 2020, 23-year-old Luis Luna lived in an apartment in the 15,000 block of West Park in the Alief area of West Harris County, sharing the space with his 3 brothers. The 8-month-old daughter he shared with his partner, Savia Mason, stayed with him at times and slept in her car seat position next to his air mattress. On August 24, 2020, shortly after midnight at around 12:20 in the morning, Harris County Sheriff's deputies responded to the apartment after reports that the infant had stopped breathing. Emergency medical personnel treated Savia and transported her to a hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences conducted the autopsy. It determined the cause of death was suffocation, with additional findings of marks on the neck and ligature marks indicating the infant had been bound. Evidence also showed the child had been sexually assaulted. Homicide investigators focused on Luna as the person responsible. He was arrested and charged with capital murder. Luna remained in custody from that day forward while the case moved through the legal system. The Harris County District Attorney's Office built its case around the forensic evidence linking the injuries and the circumstances inside the apartment. After a 10-day trial in 2024, a jury convicted Luna of capital murder. On October 4, 2024, Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg announced the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Luna will never be eligible for release. In statements following the verdict, officials described the crime as among the most disturbing they had encountered, emphasizing the vulnerability of the victim and the betrayal by a parent. The case drew significant local attention in Houston media, with coverage highlighting the rapid response by first responders and the thorough forensic work that led to the conviction. Luna's name became associated with one of the most heartbreaking infant cases in recent Harris County history, serving as a stark reminder of the risks that can exist even in the most intimate family settings. The conviction and life sentence brought a measure of accountability, though the loss of Savia Mason left a permanent void for those who loved her. Court records and public statements from the district attorney's office confirmed the sequence of events from the initial welfare call through the trial outcome, with no doubt left about the responsibility established by the evidence presented to the jury. Case 6. Norman Lee Johnson. By early 2026, 42-year-old Norman Lee Johnson had a documented history of conflict over custody of his 7-year-old biological daughter. The girl had been adopted and raised by Christopher Lopez and Trinette Lopez, both 52 years old, high school sweethearts who had been married for 28 years. Trinette was Johnson's cousin, adding a layer of family connection to the dispute. Johnson had lost custody years earlier, and the adoptive parents had taken on the responsibility of raising and protecting the child, often requiring any contact to go through Child Protective Services. Tensions escalated when Johnson felt denied access. In October of 2024, he faced a harassment charge after allegedly threatening to kill Christopher Lopez over the custody issues. That charge did not result in immediate arrest at the time, but it remained on record. On January 12, 2026, around 6 in the morning, deputies from the Harris County Sheriff's Office responded to a 2-story home in the 3700 block of Bent Springs Lane in the Katy area of West Harris County. A son of the Lopez couple had discovered his parents shot to death on the first floor. His adult sister and the 7-year-old adopted daughter had been asleep upstairs at the time and woke to the sounds. The couple was found fatally shot. In 2017, Wesley Mathews and his wife Sini lived in Richardson, Texas, with their 3-year-old adopted daughter, Sharon Susan Mathews, who had been born Saraswati Kumari on July 14, 2014, in India. The family had adopted the special needs toddler, and she was described by those who knew her as a young girl adjusting to her new life in North Texas. On Saturday, October 7, 2017, Wesley Mathews called police to report that Sharon was missing. He told officers she had gone outside while he was smoking a cigarette and had not returned. An Amber Alert was issued, and a large search operation began in the Richardson area. For 2 weeks, authorities and volunteers combed the neighborhood and surrounding areas looking for the toddler. On October 22, 2017, Sharon's body was discovered in a culvert under a road near the family home. She was found inside a bag. Wesley Mathews was arrested and initially charged with capital murder in connection with her death. His version of events changed during questioning. He ultimately told investigators that Sharon had choked on milk while drinking, that he tried to help her by gently shaking her, and that when she did not respond, he panicked and disposed of her body in the culvert. The mother, Wesley Mathews, faced a charge of child abandonment, but that charge was later dropped on March 1, 2019. The case moved toward trial in Dallas County. On June 24, 2019, Wesley Mathews pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of injury to a child by omission, intentionally and knowingly causing serious bodily injury. This plea avoided a full capital murder trial. 2 days later, on June 26, 2019, a Dallas County jury deliberated for about 1.5 to 3 hours before sentencing him to life in prison. The judge imposed the sentence that same day. Dallas County District Attorney's Office representatives stated that justice had been served for Sharon. Wesley Mathews, then 39, showed little emotion as the verdict and sentence were announced. He was sent to serve his life term in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice System. Appeals followed, but a request for a new trial was denied in September of 2019. The case drew national and international attention because of Sharon's adoption from India and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance and the discovery of her body. Media outlets across Texas and beyond covered the changing statements, the search efforts, and the eventual plea and life sentence. The Richardson Police Department noted that the outcome brought closure to a difficult investigation that had captivated the community for weeks. Sharon's short life and the events of October 2017 remain one of the more widely remembered cases involving an adopted child in North Texas, with the timeline from the initial missing person report on October 7 to the body discovery on October 22 and the resolution in June 2019 forming the core of the public record. Case 8. Stephen Clare. In Battaglia County, on April 10, 2023, authorities responded to a family residence after reports of an attack involving Stephen Michael Clare, his ex-wife Mariah Gardner, and their 2 young daughters, Rosalie and Willow Gardner. Clare is accused of shooting Mariah Gardner and stabbing the 2 girls. 11-month-old Willow Gardner did not survive her injuries, while Rosalie was also wounded in the incident. Clare, identified in records as 53 years old during later proceedings, faced immediate arrest after San Antonio Police Department officers recovered the gun used and took him into custody shortly afterward. He was charged with capital murder of a child under 10 years old in the death of Willow, attempted capital murder of a child in the attack on Rosalie, aggravated assault with a weapon, and 2 additional counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The charges carried the possibility of the death penalty if convicted. The case has moved slowly through the Battaglia County court system. As of February 2026, the trial remained on hold. On February 20, 2026, State District Judge Joel Perez of the 437th District Court granted a plea deadline extension during a hearing. Jury selection had been scheduled for the following month, but the extension created uncertainty about the timeline. Another hearing was set for February 27, 2026. Defense attorneys have filed motions to suppress certain evidence, including statements made by Clare, and the judge was preparing to rule on those. Prosecutors have continued to present the case as involving a brutal family attack, with testimony from San Antonio Police Department Sergeant Christopher Lloyd during the February 20 hearing detailing the investigation. Clare has appeared in court for pretrial hearings, including one on February 6, 2026. The delay in the trial was also influenced by scheduling conflicts with another high-profile murder case in the same courthouse. Public records and news coverage from KSAT and other San Antonio outlets have followed the proceedings closely, noting the charges stem directly from the April 10, 2023 incident. The case has remained active, with the focus on the evidence recovered and the allegations of the shooting and stabbing that resulted in the death of the 11-month-old and injuries to the other victims. As the legal process continues, Stephen Clare remains in custody, facing the serious charges outlined in the indictment. The Battaglia County District Attorney's Office has not commented extensively on ongoing matters, but the court filings and hearings have kept the case in the public eye in San Antonio. This remains one of the more recent high-profile family violence cases in the region, with the capital murder charge and potential death penalty keeping attention on the proceedings as they unfold in 2026. Case 9. George Jefferson Hassell. Born on July 5, 1888, George Jefferson Hassell lived a life that spanned 2 states and ended in one of the most notorious family tragedies in early Texas history. In 1917, in Whittier, California, he killed his first wife and her children from a previous relationship. Years later, he moved to Farwell, Texas, a small town near the New Mexico border, where he remarried and started another family. On December 5, 1926, Hassell carried out the killings that would define his name in true crime records. He took the lives of his wife Susan, age 40, and their 8 children ranging in age from 2 to 21 years old. Alton 21, David 15, Maudie 13, Russell 11, Virgil 7, Johnny 6, Nanny Martha 4, and a young nephew who was also in the home. The method involved a combination of blunt force, manual strangulation, and a shotgun for one of the victims. Hassell later confessed to the full scope of the crimes, including the earlier California killings, bringing the total to 13 victims across both families. The discovery in Farwell shocked the small community. Neighbors held a funeral for the wife and stepchildren while Hassell was already in custody and confessing. His trial began on January 26, 1927. Although he had admitted to all 13 deaths, he was indicted specifically for the murder of Alton. The proceedings were swift, and he was convicted. Hassell was sentenced to death and sent to the Huntsville unit. On February 10, 1928, at the age of 39, he was executed by electrocution. The case has been revisited in modern true crime podcasts and historical accounts, often cited as one of the worst examples of a family annihilator in American history. George Jefferson Hassell remains a stark figure from the 1920s, his crimes studied for the pattern of repeated family destruction and the scale of violence in a single household. The Farwell Massacre and the earlier California events left a lasting mark on the communities affected, with the confession and execution closing the legal chapter but keeping the story alive in discussions of extreme familial violence. Case 10. Kris Harrison. In Prosper, Texas, a Dallas suburb, on January 10, 2025, 40-something-year-old Kris Harrison, originally from the United Kingdom, was at home with his 23-year-old daughter Lucy Harrison, who had traveled from Warrington in Cheshire, England, to visit him and her 2 younger half-sisters. Lucy worked as a fashion buyer for a UK company and had been looking forward to the trip. Earlier that day, father and daughter engaged in a heated argument that included discussion of United States politics and gun ownership. Kris, who has been described as a functioning alcoholic, had consumed alcohol, including at least 3 glasses of wine. He kept a Glock semi-automatic handgun in the home for what he described as home defense. Texas law at the time did not require a license for ownership or carry in the manner he possessed it. During the exchange in a bedroom, Kris retrieved the gun from a box and pointed it in Lucy's direction while making comments that her boyfriend later characterized as taunting or teasing. According to body camera footage from the responding officer, Kris told police, "She said, 'You got a gun?' I said, 'Yes.' I got it out, and it just went off as she stood there." Lucy was struck in the chest by a single gunshot and died from the wound. Collin County authorities investigated the incident as a possible manslaughter case. A grand jury in Collin County reviewed the evidence and declined to indict Kris Harrison, resulting in no criminal charges being filed against him in Texas. The case crossed international lines because of Lucy's British citizenship and residence. On February 11, 2026, a coroner's inquest was held at Cheshire Coroner's Court in England. Senior Coroner Jacqueline Devonish heard testimony, including from Lucy's boyfriend Sam Littler, who described the strained relationship and the argument about Donald Trump that preceded the shooting. The coroner ruled that Lucy Harrison died as a result of unlawful killing on the grounds of gross negligence manslaughter. She stated that Kris knew full well he had shot his own daughter, that pointing the gun at chest height and pulling the trigger without checking whether it was loaded constituted gross negligence, and that his actions had killed his daughter. The coroner noted Kris had no formal gun training or experience firing the weapon and described him as a secret drinker who may not have realized the gun was loaded, but still bore responsibility for the reckless behavior. Family members were present and emotional during the hearing. The ruling in the United Kingdom stood in contrast to the Texas grand jury's decision not to indict, highlighting differences in legal approaches to such incidents. Kris Harrison has not faced charges in the United States, and the case has sparked discussion in both countries about gun access, parental responsibility, and cross-border justice questions. Lucy Harrison's death on January 10, 2025, in Prosper, Texas, remains one of the more recent and widely reported cases involving a British national in a family shooting on American soil. That's the complete story on today's case from Echo Case File. If it kept you hooked or gave you something to think about, drop a like on this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on for the next one. Thank you for watching and being part of the Echo Case File community. I'll see you in the next file. Stay safe out there.